This channel is part of the History Hit network.
The pupils of this Norfolk Grammar School think it's rather special, and I've got to say, they may be right. It's not everyone who's got this kind of stuff in their playground. These walls are the remains of a monastic church that stood here 600 years ago, but that's modern compared with what they think is underneath. 1,000 years ago, a Norman cathedral, one of the most important in the country, stood somewhere around here, and the pupils want us to help them find it. So, once everyone's got out of morning assembly, time team's going back to school, at least for the next 3 days. We've been invited to dig up Thetford Grammar School by 3 of its sixth formers, Holly, Emily and Tim. They're convinced the site currently occupied by their school was the ecclesiastical centre of Thetford from its Saxon heyday right through to the Middle Ages. What evidence is there?
Saxon stones, actually, in the front of the library here.
Walls.
Triangular
one there?
The triangular one on the top there, yeah. Top there. There's walls over on the far side, on the other side of this building, and just at the end here as well. So we want Time Team to come and see what they can do.
The pupils have decided our main objective is to find the Norman cathedral, which they think is somewhere under the grounds of their school. But our starting point is going to be these medieval church walls in the middle of the school playground. They're probably part of a 14th century Dominican friary church. And Mick's interested in them because he thinks the cathedral is underneath. We definitely know that this is the friary wall.
Well, that's what all the maps say, and it does look like it. I mean, the whole size, if you come back here, look, and look at that arrangement where you've got sort of the 2 pillars there and the 2 side walls, that suggests...
Oh, these are pillars? I thought those were trees.
No, there's actually stonework inside that, and the one in the corner, look. And that suggests it's got an aisle, like a church along the middle with side aisles.
Yeah. So why might the cathedral be underneath?
It could be on the same alignment. If you look on the map, look, I think that if this was a completely new site when they built the Dominican Friary, they would have built it east-west on the proper alignment. The fact it's at a skew angle might mean that it does have something of an earlier structure underneath it.
To test his theory, Mick's decided to put in 2 trenches, one up against each wall. If he's right, just following them down should lead to the cathedral foundations underneath. In fact, he said we might get the results by the end of the day. But finding the cathedral is only the half of it. The pupils also want us to investigate the Dominican friary on top. They want to know how big it was and what it looked like. Quite a job in itself. So Berwick's already checking out the pillars at the West End to see what they'll tell him about the architectural style. And geophysics have recruited pupils Adrian and Graham to help find the other end of the friary church. They're working on a tiny patch of grass here between the school library and the Lasinga building, named after one of the Norman bishops of Thetford. As well as being roughly where Mick thinks the east end of the church should be, a scar in the wall of the school library suggests a much older wall once ran across this area.
History Hit is like Netflix, just for history fans, with exclusive history documentaries covering some of the most famous people and events in history just for you. With familiar faces such as Dan Jones and Dr. Eleanor Yanega, We've got hundreds of documentaries covering the greatest figures and events of medieval history. We're committed to bringing history fans award-winning documentaries and podcasts that you cannot find anywhere else. Sign up now for a free trial, and Chronicle fans get 50% off their first 3 months. Just be sure to use the code CHRONICLE at checkout.
To start with,
Is this what we're looking for?
I hope so. This is a friary as it might have looked in the 14th century. Ours went in the 1330s, so that's about the right sort of time.
It's quite elaborate, isn't it?
Well, it is quite elaborate, and friaries, when they started 100 years before, were all much simpler buildings, as simple as that, or possibly with these side gables giving a bit more light. Looks like a church, but actually it's two separate bits. What was the nave is a preaching area where one of the friars would teach in a very homely way the exciting new ideas in religion. And through here is called the walking space, which took the friars through to where they lived at the one side of it. And this is the friars' personal chapel at the east end.
Which is just what John and his team have been looking for. John, what have you got for us?
Well, I'm actually amazed. We appear to have some positive results. The black is the rubble along the base of the wall. Yeah. But the anomaly of interest, you can see it here, comes out from the wall and appears to turn through a right angle.
Incredible right angle.
That might be wall foundations.
Where is it?
I mean, we're talking from a point here, coming out for about 6-7 metres, and then it turns through a right angle.
So it could be the cathedral or the priory?
Yeah. Well, it could
Already,
be.
12 o'clock day one, a result.
There's one problem.
Yes.
Manhole cover.
Oh, this thing here.
And that, if there's services coming this way.
Oh, that would be rotten. I don't like that.
I don't know.
Look at the
What's
map.
that?
Look at the map.
Is this the services?
map? Yeah, the green's drains and the red's a gas main, and it's just possible that
could be coming out there, isn't it?
There's nothing quite with that right angle on it, though.
No,
is
there isn't. There isn't.
So that's why we're reasonably hopeful.
Yeah. So where would you suggest from the geophysics?
Well, I think put a trench in the corner.
In the corner,
but
yeah.
dig carefully.
Yeah.
Which means dig by hand. There's a lot of pressure on this trench. We need to find this end of the friary church to work out how big it was. And a friary wall here could lead to the cathedral underneath. So hitting a gas main instead of masonry would be very disappointing. Particularly as there's no sign yet of the cathedral at the other end of the site, and in Trench 1, Phil's hit a layer of chalk rubble he's got to clean up before he can carry on downwards. So he's recruited some extra scraping power.
Come down in here with me. Now what I'm doing is just troweling back, start from that end, and we're working our way back. Main thing is keep your work nice and clean. Don't want a lot of loose and rubbish lying about all over the ground. Keep pulling off this dirty stuff, but whatever you do, don't dig holes. Okay. Reckon you can do that?
Yep. Yep.
Okay then, come and join me then.
Mm-hmm. So Phil, what are all these rocks?
The chalk, well that's part of the actual build of the wall. A lot of the buildings around here are made of a combination of flint and chalk. So all these bits of chalk are probably just waste material. You remember when this place was built, it's just a building site, and you know how building sites get really, really dirty. There's always lots of rubbish and bits of brick and tile. So effectively that's what you're looking at, just the debris from a building site. What's that then?
What's that?
Oh, a bit of tile. Yeah, bit of the roof, look.
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah, look, there's the hole. That's where the nail would have been driven in to actually fit it onto the rafters.
Yep.
That's good.
Back to the east end, and the decision to dig Trench 3 has paid off. Just inches under the turf, Carenza's hit what could be the friary wall. It's cut through by a gas pipe, so excavating it's going to be difficult. But it does align with the scar in the school library. And there are lots of finds, including what could be the remains of one of the Dominican friars.
That's a kneecap. It's part of somebody's knee.
Oh, no. Are all of these bones to the same actual knee, or? Actual bone structure.
They all look quite similar in terms of,
same sort of shape.
you know, the same colour and weight and things. I suspect they are part of the same person. That looks like a bit of pelvis, possibly.
It's amazing how you can find all these things here.
Do you think that pottery was from a jug or?
Well, you can see from the curve of it, it's going to be quite big, isn't it? To go round like it's going to be something quite big, so it's probably a bowl.
If I found things like this, it'd come to a really big surprise, but you seem really sort of not surprised that you found all these really old things.
Well, you see that most of this stuff is only probably 200 or 300 years old, if that. And what we're hoping to find is stuff that's a lot older. So what this is telling us really is that we're still in the topsoil, we're still above the archaeological layers from the medieval things. So what it's telling us is that we need to keep digging.
Yeah.
And so they do. And by lunchtime, it feels like the friary is within our grasp. The school's star artist, Vicky Green, has teamed up with Victor to begin sketching what the friary church would have looked like. The junior school are making a frieze depicting the history of the site, so there are lots of felt bishops and monks. And time team monks, as the graphics team reconstruct some of the characters who might have lived in the friary. And Mick's gone to find out from ecclesiastical historian Janet Burton and her team just who these monks really were.
Well, the order originated down here in the south of France with St. Dominic, who felt that the church needed an effective preaching weapon against groups of people who held views which the church deemed to be unorthodox and heretical. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He was also very influenced by the idea of people living a life of poverty. Yeah. So he really put those two together. And came up with this idea of the friar's preacher who would live a life of poverty.
So it's sort of like a church propaganda, really, to put ideas forcibly over to local people.
Yes, that's right. But within a few years, his ideas had developed, and he was sending the friars out to centres like Paris and Bologna and to England.
And this band of continental propagandists arrived in Thetford in the 1330s. Once here, far from home, they needed somewhere to live. So as well as the friary church, they would have built a cloister, a series of rooms round a courtyard, just to one side. And to complete our picture of the friary, we need to find it. Mick thinks it's here, under the football field to the north of the walls, and by tea time, geophysics are on the case. Trenches 1 and 2, meanwhile, have still not hit the cathedral. And before they can dig deeper, the archaeologists must extend both of them, which reveals a complication in Trench 1.
Just a little bit more, and what happens? Look what we've hit. We've got this quite hefty mortared floor surface there.
Any idea what it could be?
Well, no, because it's it's stuck frustratingly right in the end of the trench. You know, it's this sort of thing we'll just go back a couple of metres, and then you hit another problem and you don't really know how to resolve it.
So what should we do? Should we extend the trench?
Well, I think the best thing to do, Tony, is to extend the trench at least the width of the wall, possibly a little bit more. I don't think we'll be doing any harm at all doing that. It's just possible that this wall may represent the inner edge of the cloister walk, where the walk around the edge of the cloister. So I think that seems like a sound thing to do.
See, the point of it is we found it, and really, archaeologically, we've got to understand it. Yeah. There is no other way of understanding it other than digging it out.
So another delay before we can get on with our hunt for the cathedral. Though finding part of the cloister under here would help us with the friary, which is coming together nicely. Victoria has now finished her impression of the friary church, and Berwick's ready to show me what goes where. Where are we standing in relation to where this friary would have been?
We are actually here.
Oh, this is us.
This is us. Yes, those are us there.
So where's this back wall?
This end wall is that one.
This over here?
Yep. We're on the inside, of course, so you're looking at it there.
Right. That's this wall here, yep.
The aisle is coming down here, and this is the central nave.
Yeah.
Right the way through there. Now, we haven't got the columns that supported the nave, but fortunately we've got these blind arches here which echo the arches of the nave inside. And there are 5 of them. One, two, three, four, and 5 in there.
So 5 would bring us to just before this tower, yeah?
That's right. So that's the wall, effectively where the wall was at the east end of the nave.
Yeah.
And in behind there has got to be the tower.
This tower, yeah.
But the kids at the school are telling me that there are arches in there that if they're in there, in the library there, can only be the arches of the tower.
So this bit here is on the far side of here where we're digging the other trench.
Right.
But darkness is falling, and we're unlikely to get any more news from this or any of the trenches today. Though geophysics have got some late results from the football field.
Those are the resistance results. I mean, the black, I'm presuming, are wall foundations, and it looks as though we've got a range coming up here, turning through a right angle, and coming back down, whether that's the cloistral range.
I think that looks very cloister-like, that block there.
Well, that's fantastic, 'cause it's all lining up with the buildings we've got. I mean, it's really starting to look like we've got a lot of the buildings surviving.
But exciting as these results are, I can't help wondering if they might not ultimately do us more harm than good. My nervousness is that as this picture gets bigger and bigger and bigger, we're going to spend the 3 days chasing a friary, which we already know exists.
Yeah, but when we talked about doing the geophysics here, what we really wanted to see was if we had got some claustral buildings, some cloister buildings on this side.
Well, that looks very much like we've
absolutely. There was never really any intention to do any more about that. That just helps us with the interpretation of what's going on back there.
So do you think we need to actually dig any of this tomorrow?
No, I don't think we do, because I think what that's told us is these are likely to be the cloister and the cloister buildings to go with the friary. That's not what the problem is. We're trying to sort out the cathedral and the earlier buildings, and our best line of attack is to go for up against the wall, as we have done, and in the quadrangle where we've got that big area opening up with your wall down the middle of it. So I think, you know, that's been very useful, but it shows us that we don't need to do anything there.
And whatever we're going to do, we're not going to do it tonight, are we? Because we've run out of light. So, end of day 1, tomorrow, up against the wall to see if we can find the cathedral. Start of day 2, and here I am, slap bang in the middle of the cloisters of a Dominican friary. Well, at least that's what geophysics tells us. But what I want to know is whether we're going to be able to get down onto the Norman Cathedral, which we think is underneath it, which is why we dug these 2 trenches. Mick, any joy?
Well, not with the Norman Cathedral here, because we've got part of the cloister wall there, I'm pretty sure of that, for the Dominican friary. We think that's one side now, and we're going to drag this back another couple of metres, because we think the other wall of the cloister's here. There's a gap usually with the church.
Nick, never mind about these cloisters. Come and have a look at what we've got over here. It's far more exciting.
What's this then?
Well, look at this wall here. Look, do you see how it's on a different alignment? And what's more, this wall here, which we think might be part of the friary, look how much it's sitting on top of this, which is on a totally different alignment.
Yeah.
Those 2 are separate walls. That's a different, earlier wall than that.
So if this is earlier than that, then presumably this could be our first
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
That is exactly what we've been looking for, is a wall underneath all this lot that's on a different alignment that could be a different earlier structure.
Yeah. When you say different alignment, I mean, it's not much, is it? Could it
Oh,
just be
come
bad
on, Tony,
workmanship?
look, bad workmanship.
I don't know, it's just a suggestion.
It's beautifully shaped and squared along the edge. That's good workmanship.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a nice wall.
It's like that sort of angle along that line, look.
Yeah.
But then the friary is on that sort of angle.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's quite substantial, even just here. So presumably you're going to come back this way a bit, Phil.
I reckon we've gone about another 2 metres.
At last, a firm lead on the cathedral. But I'm going to have to be patient because there's a lot of complicated stonework here. And Phil's already talking about extending both trenches again. What's all this?
This is our timeline.
What's a timeline?
It's a line that tells you history, and we've done our timeline on Thetford.
So it starts in 631. What happened then?
Well, Sigbert was converted to Christianity by Bishop Felix, and if this hadn't happened, there would be no churches in Thetford.
And then 1066? Oh, I know what happened then.
1066, the Normans came along and conquered England, and they also came to Thetford.
And then we've got a cross with Elmham on it in 1071. What's that?
Bishop Hurfast, he lived in Elmham, but he started to think that Elmham was a bit too small, so he moved all his see to Thetford, and then he was all right there.
Then Herbert Losinga came, and he was made Bishop of Thetford.
And in 1094, is that him being the bishop?
Yes, he was getting a bit tired of Thetford because he started to think that was a bit small, so he moved everything he had to Norwich.
And he was all right then?
Yes.
What strikes me about this is that Thetford was a cathedral city for a very short time, just 23 years. Why then did the first Bishop Hurfast build a cathedral here at all?
The Normans didn't like this idea that the Anglo-Saxons had got cathedrals scattered around in villages and the countryside. This didn't fit the model of the cathedral being in a city at all. And so there was a great campaign in the 11th century to move them. And there's probably a dozen examples around the country. And this one had been at North Elmham, which is further north up near Norwich. And they moved it here because this was, you know, quite a big centre of population. I mean, they then moved it again to Norwich, which is an even bigger centre of population. But that's why it was moved. It's coming into a town, in fact, rather than being out in the countryside.
How big would it have been?
Well, that's what we're juggling with here, actually, because we've got this 1 to 500 map of the friary walls and so on. And we've got various cathedrals here. I mean, this, for example, is Lanfranc, his new building at Canterbury. And you see, if we drop that on across our site, it's a huge structure. It goes much further west than our west wall of the friary. Perhaps a more comparable one would be somewhere like Old Sarum.
That's Salisbury?
Yeah, it's just outside Salisbury now. It was abandoned in the 13th century. Now, if we put that, if you see there's two here, there's one with little apses, look, which is the earlier bit.
Oh, so this bit's just an add-on?
Yeah, this was all added on later on in the Norman period. Now, if you put that west wall in there, either that west wall or that west wall.
So it just only goes as far as there?
Yeah, I mean, it fits very nicely. What it does mean is that the critical area really is in the quadrangle in the middle.
Well, this is there. This is where Trench 3 is.
Yeah.
And where Carenza is doing very well with the friary, if not yet the cathedral. She's uncovered some flint facing, a medieval stone buttress, and a floor level. Better still, she's got some brilliant finds that'll help us reconstruct what it looked like.
Found some bits of painted glass, which we think must be medieval. The fact that they're painted is really quite well. It's just very nice. It looks like stained glass windows. You can see traces of paint on it.
Red pigment on it.
Yeah.
Very good.
Fragments like this are incredibly rare, so we've called in a glass expert to have a closer look tomorrow. And if we can find any more, he may be able to help us reconstruct the original designs on the friary windows.
This sounds all very, very familiar.
Phil's decided to take a break from digging walls so he can help build one. Local stonemason Simon Williams and pupils Edmund and Alex are going to make a bench using the same techniques as were used to build the friary walls 600 years ago. This means mixing lots of lime mortar and napping lots of flints.
Let's set you off with some of these easier ones. All right. If you can get a nice curved surface like that, and that bit goes in the wall like that, and then we'll mortar them in. Okay, let's see you have a go then.
It's not quite as easy as Phil makes it sound.
No, let's do it that way round. That angle must be acute. No good if it's greater than 90 degrees. Hold it up like that, bang, like that, and that end should come off.
However, it's not long before Edmund and Alex are experts. A few hours of this, and they'll have enough to start building.
Brilliant. It's exactly what you want.
The Time Team dig has now become a big school project. Adam is reporting our every move on the school website. Catherine and Anna are helping Sue plot out the friary ground plan. The 3 trainee diggers are uncovering more of the cloister walls in Trench 1. And they're keeping the fines washers busy too. Mick's decided on a new strategy for finding the cathedral. Instead of digging through the friary, he's going to dig outside it. If the cathedral is as grand as he thinks, then it would have been much broader than the friary at the east end, and he hopes Trench 4 here will hit part of it without getting bogged down in the later building. Which is what seems to be happening everywhere else. Trench 3 is so constrained by pipes and concrete, Mick thinks it's unlikely to get below the friary. And massive extensions to Trenches 1 and 2 have revealed lots more of the cloister and another gas pipe, but not much of the wall we thought might be part of the cathedral.
Well, it's not looking much like the cathedral anymore, I'm afraid.
Oh,
look, you see this here is very, very straight cut. I don't think that's a robbed wall.
Yeah.
Which means?
Well, I mean, if this was a wall that came right along and you actually thought that it was going to be robbed out, you'd have a very jaggedy edge. You don't get it nice and straight cut like that. That looks as though that's where the end of the wall is. It stops there.
So it's much more like what you suggested, that the builders didn't know what they were doing.
Well, the build is good. It's just that they ain't quite straight.
So if this isn't the cathedral wall, we're really running out of time, aren't we? Because we've now got this enormous trench. We've got to record, presumably, all this stuff before we get down any deeper. Why are we expanding sideways rather than getting down in order to discover more about the cathedral?
We've had to create enough space so that we can go down because, well, just for health and safety reasons.
Well,
we've got enough space for an open cast mine.
No, but we've only got enough to go down, what, a metre here?
Yeah,
Phil,
I mean, the point is we don't need to help it anymore. Now we can go down. We know which areas we want to target.
OK, well, show me where you are going to dig deeper.
We should go down in the corner and then we can get a section down the main foundations of the west wall, and we can also test this buttress there.
In other words, revert to Plan A. And despite everyone's assurances, I'm beginning to wonder if we'll find this end of the cathedral at all. And I'm suspicious that Stuart, who's usually a surveyor, has teamed up with the historians.
Ingressi sunt ecclesiam antiquam beata Maria et omnium sanctorum.
They seem to be cooking up some sinister plot from contemporary accounts of the cathedral.
It says here that Hurfast had no intention of remaining long in Thetford.
I wonder what the cathedral was actually like, really, what it was made out of.
The cathedral did not, it seems, belong to the bishop, but was, as the Norwich Chronicle...
Where the monks lived, they were made of woodwork.
It just seems with implication there's something unusual about the status of this cathedral, doesn't there? It's very, very weird what's going on here.
But they refuse to tell us what's going on. So it's a huge relief when, after just a couple of hours working in Trench 4, Carenza uncovers a wall.
This is great. I mean, it's actually too narrow, really, to be a substantial building. What we're thinking at the moment is it's probably something like a garden wall, but it's clearly reusing earlier stone. You can see this is a big square block here. That's a medieval building stone shaped at the corner there. And here, look, we've got this circular stone. It's actually a column base. You can see there's the square base of it there. It comes through on that side as well. So they're clearly reusing medieval building stone here.
So there might be something earlier below it.
I think we're feeling quite optimistic at the moment.
This partly answers your worries, does it? That, you know, we're actually going down and we're hopefully outside the friary. So any earlier structures, you know, we're in the right sort of place here for them.
Yeah, I knew I could rely on Carenza.
Great.
Ah, Tony, thanks.
So what's the technique here then?
Okay, the technique here is to prepare a bed joint.
Yeah.
Look for a flint that is approximately the same shape as you require to fit in the top.
Right.
If it doesn't quite fit, dress it with the hammer,
Right.
using the same napping techniques.
I should be all right on that bit.
Should be.
And then you just make it fit?
Make it fit, yeah.
And presumably all your rubbish, all the bits that you nap, you can fling them in the wall.
Exactly, yeah.
So you can, it's a very clean building technique, isn't it, eh?
It is, it is.
That more or less it?
Lovely. Yep, yep.
Cool.
Smashing job.
Who do you reckon these characters were who were doing all this medieval building?
They were masters in vernacular building, passed down through word of mouth.
And they would have just habitually built in flint, because that's all they had.
Because that was the local building stone, yeah, definitely.
It's just about knocking off time and they'll leave the wall to set overnight. But just as everyone starts to relax, the bombshell drops. 7 o'clock day 2. By now we should be going home. All the pupils and teachers have gone home. But we need a meeting because Stuart has come up with a theory, which is that we're looking for something that doesn't exist. We thought we were looking for a Norman cathedral, but I think I'm right in saying that you believe that there might not be one here, that what we might have is an Anglo-Saxon church, which was used by the Normans as a cathedral. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. I think the term cathedral is misleading as well. Because the Bishop Herfast moved here in 1071 and the cathedral was established, there is this perception we're looking for a Norman cathedral, whereas in fact the evidence seems to be pointing out to him coming here and just using Thetford as a staging post to grab Bury St Edmunds, where the real commercial wealth is and the growth is at this time. And there seems to be lots of documentary evidence which is pointing in towards that.
What sort of thing?
Well, this is a question that we've been pursuing, looking through the documents, and we can't find any evidence of anyone who says that Herfast actually built anything when he came to Thetford.
But isn't this the point that historically maybe we can't resolve it, but archaeologically we might be able to? I mean, you're none of you saying that the centre of the sea wasn't here. There was a building that was used as a cathedral, and archaeology maybe is the only way that's going to tell us whether it's a Saxon building or a Norman building.
I don't have any problem with what you said. I mean, I don't care, quite honestly, whether it's a Saxon building taken over or he built a new one, you know. I mean,
but we have been looking at zonking great transparencies of what we thought were comparable cathedrals all day, haven't we?
Yeah. Well, we had one look at them, yeah, but I mean, I could...
We've used them as one bit of our evidence.
Yeah, I could equally live with the idea that it is, you know, a pre-existing 10th century Saxon church for something that he takes over, which is
we actually don't know that the Anglo-Saxon church is in stone.
No.
And it could just be a timber church. The bishop's seat at Elmham was a timber building.
But at what date, though?
At 1071, when he moves here.
It was still timber at that
still
day?
timber.
That's according to one, again, rather later source.
And recently,
so if it's timber, then presumably there would be nothing
There'll be no trace
left
of that
at all.
church. Yeah, that's one thing to bear in mind. There may be no trace of the Saxon
I think we have
church.
to
Well, I think this definitely is the end of day 2 now. Join us after the break and let's see whether, regardless of how big or small or wooden or stone it is, we can find out exactly what this cathedral looks like. If anyone says the word cathedral to me, I think of Canterbury or Wells or any of those huge stone buildings. But of course, a cathedral isn't a building, it's a function. It's just a place where a bishop has their headquarters. So we might not be looking for a big stone building at all. It might be a little wooden one. But whatever it is, we've now only got 1 day left to sort it out. So 8:30, day 3, and the heat's really on. Well, heat of a sort. Actually, it's cold and wet. But in Trench 4, Carenza's exposing more of the garden wall in the hope that there's a Norman one underneath. At the other end of the trench, they found a stone surface which could be another wall. And at the other end of the site, Phil's opened a foxhole to chase the friary down below its foundations. Are many of the pupils at the school aware that there was supposed to be a cathedral here once?
Definitely, it's drummed into us at history lessons, the importance of the history of the school. It's, you know, it's one of the, every school, every building has, you know, its importance, and this school we're on the site of one of the oldest churches. We have a cathedral.
We're one of the oldest schools in the country.
Yeah.
When we take people around school, it's definitely a sort of
yeah.
tell them that we're the fourth
Yeah.
oldest school in Britain. Come on, it's sort of make it exciting.
But Emma, you're now saying that there might not be a massive Norman cathedral here at all. It might be a wooden preface. You could go down as the head girl.
You realise this could be it. The head will have you out, passed out.
But at least the school's definitely got a friary, and we're doing a thorough job on it. So thorough, in fact, that John's surveying the football field diagonally to see if he can get a sharper picture of the cloister. And David, the glass expert's now ready with his verdict on the fragments of window from Trench 3.
Which came up. There are a number of pieces of glass which had oak leaves on them. This is a big one.
Oh, yes.
There were some smaller ones as well, but that's a rather nice place. We'll put that over there for a minute. And also acorns, which you would expect to go with oak leaves. Yeah, there's a rather nice little acorn there. It's what we call naturalistic leaf foliage. So you get naturalistic leaf foliage coming in English stained glass around about 1280. I mean, that's not precise.
Right.
Going on for about 70 years to the middle of the 14th century, about 1350. One tiny fragment had a very important technique on it, whereby they painted a wash of paint on with a soft brush, and then with a harder brush they would smear that shading to give some parallel lines on. That's called smear shading, and that's normally dated to about 1330 to 1380 as a rough
That's perfect,
indication.
because we know the Dominican friary here was founded in 1335.
Yes.
So these must have been the windows that were put in when the building was first erected.
Yes.
The detail on the glass is so good, David's actually identified the original artist as the same man who painted some of the windows in Ely Cathedral.
A pretty good idea.
And by matching our shards to photos from Ely, Victor's able to sketch the original design on our friary windows. So our picture of the friary is just about complete. The monks would have entered here, through the walking space, towards the arches at the central tower. To their left stretched the preaching area, and to the right the private chapel. And in the east end, a huge stained glass window with the figure of Christ looking down on the assembled gathering. So now it's high time we had a breakthrough on the cathedral. And the garden wall in Trench 4 may be it, because underneath is an older, more substantial and reassuringly stone one.
It's certainly looking as if it's a good, big, solid Norman wall with facing stones. This stone doesn't seem to have the characteristic tooling of Norman work, and that's slightly worrying, but broadly speaking, we've not hit anything this size.
I was going to say that the construction's different anyway, isn't it? If that's blocks of chalk,
it is totally
water.
different. It's totally different from the friary.
From the friary, yeah.
So it's possible this wall could be part of a substantial stone cathedral, which is fantastic. But having hit the water table, they're going to have trouble exposing enough of the wall to prove it. If we can't get any further by digging down, is there the possibility of moving it further along that way?
Well, I don't...
Yes is my answer.
We have a
Carenza, you
problem.
don't look like a yes.
Well, We have a lot of problems that way. We've got a drain coming across there anyhow. We've got that tree.
We can get
for the sheer amount of effort it would take, I'm reluctant to go. I'd actually be more interested in
If we've
feeling
got the courage to stick with our original hypothesis, we're expecting this to be the outer aisle of the east end of the Norman church.
Right.
For it to end in an apse.
Yeah.
It could end in an apse quite a long way over there.
Or just under there.
Or just under there. Now, if it followed the idea that it's a cathedral and therefore most of the choir stalls are back there in the crossing, this east end isn't very long.
Yeah.
And it could actually turn just behind me here.
But we are beginning to move back towards the hypothesis of big, solid Norman cathedral rather than wooden shack.
I don't think we ever really lost that. I think that
we felt like we did last night.
Hang on, no, we've got to sort of compromise. If this chap's here for 20 or 30 years, he's not going to just settle for even a rather grand Anglo-Saxon church. He's going to start putting an east end on it, probably with apses and so on. And so we're probably in that sort of area here.
Lorenzo, are you persuaded of that? Are you happy for us to go this way a bit?
The odds of hitting the turning in the small space we've got seem to me fairly low. And it's hard work and it's wet, but if you really want to do it, we'll do it.
They're going to have to get on with it. It's nearly midday, and as well as Carenza's Norman wall, there's still the mystery surfaces at the other end of the trench to sort out before we'll know for sure what we've got. But if we're feeling the pressure of time, so too are all the pupils. They're frantically preparing for the arrival of their parents in 5 hours' time. We'll want to see what their children have been doing instead of going to class for the last 3 days. Among the melee, the historians are quietly finding out about Thetford's bishops. The one I'm most interested in is Bishop Lasinga, the man who actually moved the cathedral from Thetford to Norwich. In spite of this act of abandonment, the school have named a building after him. Why has the school tied itself in with this particular historical character and not with another one?
We know that Herbert Lasinga, as a bishop, played a big role as an educator. Bishops at that time played big roles. They were involved with their churches, with their sees, which were places of education at the time.
So what sort of thing did they learn?
Well, they learnt music and arithmetic, geometry. Astronomy, I thought, was quite unusual, also usual grammar and logic, and also rhetoric, which is the art of debate and persuasion, obviously teaching them to be preachers and how to get people around to their way of thinking about religion. Of course, it was all about religion then.
And we've got some quotes for him as educators.
Oh, I like that bit about the sluggish youth, actually. I thought that was quite good about there,
You are the most indolent and sluggish of youths.
How long will you disgrace yourselves with these infantile dribblings? Could you get on with your infantile dribblings for a bit? And we'll see you again at the end of the day for the big do.
Yeah. Okay, bye.
Oblivious to the chaos around them, the stonemasons are quietly getting on with the Time Team wall. They've just got to put a top on it to turn it into a bench. Then Phil will test their craftsmanship by sitting on it. But first, I'm hoping he's found us the other end of the cathedral in Trench 2. What do you reckon we've got here then, Phil?
Well, we've actually got the total sequence of the wall of the friary. The actual flint walling stops there. You can see I can get my pole in there. And this is the foundation makeup that the wall sits on. And then right at the bottom we've got this rather nice chalky mortar surface, for want of a better word, probably a floor. And below that it's a sandy gravel, but it's still not natural.
So you're fairly confident that there ain't no cathedral here?
I think that's the conclusion we would have to draw from that. So I think my guess would be that it doesn't come this far.
So is that it?
I think that's it here. I think we can
think we're going to get any
leave
more out of
this, record it, and move down to Trench 4.
Which is now our last hope, and where Carenza is single-handedly digging up what now looks like a very complex set of walls.
What we've got is we've got one wall, which we're pretty sure is Norman.
Well, that looks pretty much like a wall to me.
It looks brilliant. It's even got plaster on it still. Turns round here, and then turns again here. What we want to do is try to find this end of it. I mean, I think we've got it coming through here.
Oh, I see.
So
in other words, if I come somewhere down here
somewhere
then...
like that, yeah.
Oh.
Although everyone's now pretty sure we've hit the cathedral, we've still got no firm evidence these walls are Norman, so Phil and Carenza are digging on. And no one's celebrating quite yet, least of all John Gator, who's just discovered what he found under the football field on day one was probably not the cloister. His new diagonal results show a much stronger response a lot further east.
The actual cloisters is coming through here and we're going right down.
So the actual alley is going that way for that one, and then, the other one going off that way?
Goes off that way. And if I've put it on to the plan here and see we're extending.
Oh crikey, it's heading straight for where we've got the excavation. Let's go and just trace that through there.
I mean, we're coming way beyond.
So it's going through here somewhere?
We've surveyed right up to the edge. We can't survey beyond.
Right.
But we're talking another 15 metres beyond.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's going to come out.
Right here, where Phil and Carenza are themselves beginning to realise what's happened.
When you have a look at this side, we've got one of those nice splint face walls, which is sort of good news because it's looking like a good wall, but sort of...
Oh,
that's nice.
That's a nice surface on that side.
Trouble is, it's looking a bit friary-like.
And indeed, that's exactly what it is. John's results reveal a horrible truth. The new position of the cloister, 20 yards further east than we originally thought, means what Phil and Carenza have been digging up in Trench 4 isn't a Norman apse at all, nor is it even part of a Saxon church. It's the southeastern corner of the Friary Cloister. What a bitter disappointment. But if the cathedral structure has so far eluded us, at least the two reused stones from the garden wall offer evidence there was a Norman building here of some sort.
This one is Norman.
Oh, right.
Yep, it's got a good half roll there, and then it's got a slightly wave to it there, but it's okay. And it would be in the corner, going back here into a window.
Right.
Almost certainly into a window reveal. So that's just a decorative feature that would go up each side of a window reveal.
Yeah. When you say Norman, you know, I mean, 12th century, presumably.
12th century. Yeah, we can just stick a 12th century.
Right. Now that looks earlier.
Well, it's certainly earlier. It would be 11th century Norman.
Yeah.
And it's just possible that it could be Saxon.
So they're our best indicators, really, of an early structure on this site at the moment.
They probably are. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It looks as if Stuart and the historians are right. Thetford Cathedral was probably no more than a small Saxon church. And it may even have been made mainly of wood, which would explain why we couldn't find it. Herfast might have modified the East End slightly when he arrived from Elmham, but it remained for the next 20 years a cathedral only in name. That is a nice bit of napping, isn't it?
That's got some of the best elements of East Anglian flint tradition in there.
Did you two do that?
We helped.
So shall we test it out?
Well, why not? I think I've been wanting to sit down all right. We're going to go together.
Ready? Ta-da!
Oh, sound, eh?
At least we've got one decent wall this weekend.
Yeah!
6 o'clock and the parents are arriving. And we've no cathedral to show them. But they and the pupils are just delighted by what we have found.
These cloisters are definitely further down. Because this is what they found on day one with all the geophysics.
So this is what you were telling us last night?
Yeah, this has just been today, actually putting it all together, but throughout the last few days, as we've been coordinating with the archaeological groups.
These are the pictures of what they've taken of the digging. It's been scanned into the computer. And you see the background? Yeah. They're the soil samples.
It's 7:15 and all the sensible people are drinking wine and nibbling cheese biscuits in the Great Hall. But our archaeologists are still beavering away. Phil, how are you getting on?
Oh, pretty well actually, Tony. We've really got right down here a really black, rich organic level, which we think is probably the floodplain.
Great.
But
we've gone right down to the floodplain and we still haven't found the cathedral.
There's no building evidence in there.
John, how are you going to explain this to your Board of Governors?
Well, no, I think the important thing is that we've been looking for the truth about the site, and we've increased our knowledge of that truth, and that's absolutely marvellous. We've had an experience of what it's like searching for the truth, the archaeological truth, and that's been well worth doing. I think the Board of Governors will be pleased, I think, absolutely.
You'll take them on?
Absolutely, I've still got a job, yes.
What I've found so interesting about this weekend is that up until now, I've always thought of a cathedral as a great monolithic thing just plonked down in the middle of the countryside and staying there forever and a day. But I now realise that there was a time during the 10th, 11th century when power was swirling all over the place, and that here the cathedral, which meant power, was moving from Elmham to Thetford to Norwich, and that there was this one golden moment, 20 years, when Thetford was the centre of East Anglia.